Welcome back to MMA Unhinged, and joining me today is two-time Ultimate Fighting final or winner. Sorry, Brad Katona. Brad, how are you, man?
I'm good. I'm good. Thanks for having me.
No, thanks for taking the time. I couldn't decide between finalist and, and winner there. My apologies. Yeah. So, how are
both,
you?
both.
But how are you feeling as we're about 3 months out from your fight?
Yeah, I'm feeling pretty good. But it's funny. It all feels like it was so long ago. I guess it wasn't that far ago. I guess August. So end of summer, and now we're kind of rolling into the Christmas season. So
Yeah.
it's a long time, but a short time, if that makes sense. And everything's exactly the same as it was, but also different. I like it's weird when you put into words like that, but it's like your day to day is basically the same. You go to the gym, you train your butt off, you come home, you relax, but it's all just a little nicer and easier and more pleasant right now because I'm back where I belong.
Well, and not just that, but you're back in the UFC now, man. So congratulations.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, got a little maybe like a title, like first two-time Ultimate Fighter winner next to my name now, but that's not the end goal. So now we're just building, from there. How I describe it is kind of we're at base camp of Mount Everest now, and that UFC bantamweight division is quite stacked, so it's almost literally climbing Everest.
Oh, 100%, 100%. And I do want to talk about that in a little bit, but I want to talk about fight camp. How's that, or have you started yet?
Yeah, it's whenever you talk about fight camp, it's what is fight camp anyway? Like I've had a whole bunch of teammates that are like, I'm in fight camp, and then when they're not in fight camp, they're nowhere to be found. So I'm in the gym pretty much year round. Like I'm always there. So we're kind of at what I would call kind of the pre-camp stage where you just kind of build up the training volume, getting starting to pick up the intensity. The intensity's starting to get there, but pretty well next week we're going to be right into the thick of it, and so it's going well. I'm 100% healthy, which is a lot more than a lot of fighters can say, and that's how I like to be. So not much changes from OTA camp to fight camp, but everything's going swimmingly, and it's done with so much less resistance when you're where you belong. I'm a lot less of a bitter, you know, asshole in the gym. Like
No worries. You fought at three different weight classes before, so I know each one can affect you differently. So is 3 months kind of a typical fight camp timeline for you?
I've only really fought at bantamweight. Like I guess you could say I did featherweight, but that was only for the Ultimate Fighter season
Right.
27. I did one lightweight fight, which like I'm 5'6". Like there's no way I'm a lightweight, and I'm not nearly a meatball like Volkanovski even, who's maybe a lightweight, I'm a bantamweight. I think I fit very well into that. Obviously, I like a lot of time. It just means I can take a little less. It's not even strictness. It's just if I can control my diet over 12 weeks, it's a whole lot less severe than if you have 6 weeks. So
Yeah,
it's that,
100%.
that's a major difference. And I'm a planner, so not much necessarily changes, but it's just nice to know, I don't need to worry about the future. It's not something that's going to come up short notice. I have a target, and I kind of work backwards from there. So um, it's it's I always like more time than less, but some fighters are different. Some fighters don't want to be thinking about the opponent that long. They want it just to happen right away, and they perform better that way. We can even think of Michael Bisping when he beat Rockhold. There's lots of examples of that, but I like planning.
100%. And recapping to the Ultimate Fighter finale there, I know you said like not much has changed. You're still you're taking it day by day. You're still training regardless of what you're doing. But like describe the feeling being able to, because I watched your fight and it was a great fight, and I saw your post fight, and I mean there was a lot of emotions. I just like describe the feeling being able to not only win it again, but to be able to get back in the UFC and all that hard work outside the UFC that you had to do to work your and claw your way back into the UFC.
Yeah, a big part of it is it feels like it's taken some pressure off because when you're doing everything that you could possibly do and you're not failing, but you're still not getting the opportunity, to me, it was driving me crazy. And,
Hmm.
and you could talk to all the performance psychologists in the world saying, focus on what you can control. But this is still your dream, your livelihood, everything is getting kept from you for what feels like arbitrary reasons. So all I asked for was the opportunity. If I failed, I failed. At least I got to take a crack at it. But uh, just give me the opportunity, and I'll kick that door down. I think that's what I did, and I think I put on a very good performance, and I beat some hard guys to get here just in the Ultimate Fighter house, and it feels really good to be back, and it makes everything happen with a lot less resistance. I've always been picturing fighting the Sean O'Malley's now, the Aljamain Sterling's. Heck, I fought Barab. That's where I've been living at the past couple of years. But now that it's a reality, it doesn't necessarily change anything. But it's nice that you're at least in that race now. You're a part of it, and that can add pressure. But for me, it's almost taking off pressure. Now it's in my hands.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, like you've seen a lot of guys, even someone of note, Brandon Moreno. I mean, I don't know if he got released or whatever, but I want to say he got released by the UFC and he went out, I think, at LFA, and he was kicking ass there, and then he came back to the UFC, climbed the rankings again, won the belt. I mean, that must just give you the extra motivation yourself to see that that is possible. Like you can see what could happen when you take that pressure off. You leave the organization, you get some wins back, and you win it, and you can come back and win it all.
Yeah, in my opinion, yeah, that's what we're going for. Obviously, the Brandon Marino story, it worked better when he was champ, but it's still a good story either way. He's right there. Yeah, it just shows that when you're living at that level day in day out, how Marino was. Maybe he lost a couple fights, got released, and worked his way back. He probably operated as a champion that entire time. And that's why when he made it back, he was able to, go and succeed the way he had. And that's what I've been doing. I can't really say I've changed all that much. And then in the same sentence, I'll say, but I changed everything. But it's all been made just small steps, fights by fight, and that just sharpening that fight camp, that year-round approach, and so it feels like nothing's changed because I looked 6 months ago or 12 months ago and it's very similar. But when you look 3 years ago, that's where the major changes come.
Yeah, 100%. And I want to fast forward to your upcoming fight now. You got a fight in Toronto. UFC 297 in Toronto here, January 20th. I know that Dublin's kind of like your second home here, but you were born in Canada. So how does it feel to be able to come back home and be able to display it for your native country?
It's completely full circle to be back in fighting in UFC Toronto. The last UFC Toronto card was UFC 231, which was my first fight after the Tough 27 finale, after winning that. So
That
now
was a
it
great card.
feels absolutely for full circle because it's my first fight from the UFC finale. Ultimate Fighter finale, Tough 31 in Boston, and now it's my first fight out of there back in Toronto. So you almost can't write it better. It's like I don't want to say a fairy tale ending, but it's just perfect. Like if you're making a movie, that's exactly how you do it. You do it full circle, back in Toronto, back on a pay-per-view card, back around Christmas. Last time it was in December, which was nice for maybe the family man in me wanting to be home for Christmas. But I can celebrate a month later and soak this all in. This is it feels good. It feels really good.
Well, I don't know what kind of sorcery the UFC was brewing up for you, but I feel like, yeah, it just seems like just a coincidence that that happened in Toronto. Now you're back in Toronto again. So I'm glad to see that happen. Did you get a chance to watch the pay-per-view that they had in Vancouver?
I did. I did. I watch it. I watch every UFC Sunday morning here. You know, it's on during the night, and you can wake up at 3 or 4 a.m. But I always just catch it afterwards, and usually wake it up to it with. I consider it my morning cartoons as if you were a kid. This time I have a coffee and I'm watching fights. Uh, I did watch it, and the Canadians succeeded. You know, like we ran through. I think it was 5 wins. I think we had 5 Canadians. Could have been 6, but it was we went 5-0 that night, and I
Yeah.
see us hopefully repeating that and having another amazing show. And Canadian MMA is so hot right now.
Yeah, and I wanted to touch upon that. Like, I mean, you look at that card. I mean, the crowd was electric. I mean, the energy was just there for those Canadians. And I mean, I don't think it's gonna be any different for this card here. I mean, you have a lot of great Canadians on this card as well, and I think they're still working on it. So, looking at this, do you expect even more? Do you expect even more in Toronto now?
It's going to be at least when I was watching the UFC Vancouver card. You know, the crowd was so riled up that they broke over when the barriers. You know, like I don't know if
Oh,
you
I
can
think that
quite
was
beat
Mike
that.
Malott that came
Yeah,
walking in.
exactly. Exactly. So Mike Villon's going to be on this card as well. I'll be joining him, and I'm hoping they're just as excited, just as rowdy, and just as Canadian. You know, it's so nice to see, and especially with the Canadians being successful that card. You know, it's just I feel like we went through a little bit of a dark period. We hadn't been in Canada in a long time. Finally, we were back. It was a major pay per view. Now it's another major pay per view. It's just it's a good sign of things to come. And there's a lot of Canadian talent as well. So again, it's just I'm Canadian at heart, and I'm just happy to see it.
Yeah, and talking about your upcoming fight, you know, you have a lot of great coaches over at SPG. So, is there anyone in particular that's overseeing your fight or your camp? Sorry.
You know, my camp's always been under John Kavanagh. Yeah, I know we built a very good relationship over the years. It's been the past about 2 years now. We brought on a good friend and of his, Dave Roach, who's an excellent striking coach, and it feels like it's that yin and yang. John's that engineered, really grappling heavy, very analytical, person, is an engineer like myself. And then you have Dave, who's more of the striking heavy, and really is teaching a lot more fighting. Like there's the sport and there's the martial arts, and that's a lot of John's side. And not to say Dave doesn't have that. Absolutely, he does. But he's also bringing in kind of like a bit of a meanness side. Like smash in the past couple of fights. You've seen me smashing in elbows, smashing in knees. Like it's just a for lack of a better word, just that meanness will bring it up. We're making it a bit more of a fight, and sometimes you need to do that. It doesn't need to be perfect, and an elbow connection that can change the course of the fight. So that's now the yin and yang that we have in the gym, and so I'm having both of them watching over my camp, helping build me, and it's just like I said, a lot has changed, but when you look at it over the months, you're like, not much has changed, but a lot has changed working with Dave, and so I'm just excited to keep on building with the two of them behind me.
Yeah, and then talking about the fight itself, you know, you got Garrett Armfield in front of you here. You know, he's trained at a really good gym over at Killcliff. You know, looking at your opponent, what's your thoughts about your opponent, and can you kind of break down this fight for me?
You know, first off, when you're in the UFC, everyone's going to be coming from a good camp.
Yeah.
There's just some things which are that the standards. They're going to be tough. They're going to be gritty. They're going to come in shape, hopefully on weight and from a good gym. Like those are just the bare minimums. When you're a prospect coming up, those are maybe things you think about. This guy's not going to go way easier. This guy's, from really good gym. Maybe we'll hold off. I never had that luxury, but in theory, that's what you'd be saying as a prospect coming up, or your coaches would be saying. With this fight, it's very important that I just show up and show off the best version of myself. Like it's just a matter of me focusing on me. Obviously, there's threats, just like any opponent. Like I can look at the past couple I fought. They've been able to wrestle, they've been able to strike, and same with their opponent in front of me. So it's really up to me executing my game and controlling what I can. I love what John says. He says the opponent chooses how they lose. And so it's my job to throw problem after problem his way. And if he doesn't have an answer to it, or he gives into a position, great, there's a finish. But that's not necessarily up to you to decide. In my last fight with Cody, I hit him with big shots after big shots, and he just wasn't going away. That wasn't up to me. I couldn't hit him with anything more. I don't know if there was many bantamweights who could hit him with more. Maybe if when the matchmakers slid me a baseball bat, maybe I would have been able to put him away. But he wasn't going down until the final bell. So at the end of the fight, he collapses on the canvas. But that doesn't necessarily mean anything for me. That doesn't mean a stoppage. But we brought him to the end, but he decided to stick on in. So your opponent chooses how they lose, and so that's what I've relinquished myself to.
And I mean, looking at your opponent, how do you kind of see this fight breaking down? Or how do you kind of looking at him? I mean, do you have a kind of an ideal of how, like, what he's going to bring to this fight, and what do you bring to this fight?
You can start predicting how they're going to fight. Okay, he normally starts fairly hot. He generally likes to strike. But then when he gets hit, he wrestles, but that's the same for probably 90% of the
90%,
UFC roster. He has heavy hands, but I don't know a bantamweight who you'd want to get hit by in today's division, at least, that you're confident just eating and walking through. So that's not to say he doesn't have anything dangerous, or that he doesn't have anything unique to him. He does, but how is he going to fight? Does he think he can exploit the wrestling? Being from Missouri, it's a very heavy wrestling state, and he's a good wrestler. So is he going to try to wrestle and control me? Maybe there's opportunities from my previous fights, from Marab and maybe Timmer, where he goes, okay, maybe there might be an opportunity here. There could be an opportunity that he's seeing from the Cody fight or the Timmer fight in the striking department. I'm not really sure, but which one's he going to throw out? Is he going to do both? Could he come with a striking heavy style and I connect and then he shoot? Who knows what's going to happen? And that's the beauty of fighting. That's what the uncertainty is what leaves you nervous getting ready for fights. It's if you knew exactly what was going to happen, if the result was certain, you wouldn't get nervous. There'd be nothing. It's not that unpleasant. It's not that painful, So why are you getting nervous? It's the uncertainty. How am I going to fight this fight? And that's what I'm working towards, and that's what I have so much time to be polishing up on. And really, I feel like when I bring the best version of myself, I'm the best bantamweight in the world, and I can compete with anybody in the division. Right now, you're looking at the top guys ranked in the top 15. Are they any better than some of the unranked guys? I don't know. So it's just my opportunity to again present him prom after prom, and he can choose how he loses.
Absolutely. And talking about, like, in your camp, and I know you're always everybody's trying to get better every day. But is there something specifically that you've been working on since your last fight that you're just that is there a certain area of your game that you're trying to improve on more than others?
It's really an all round approach.
Mhm.
You're wanting. It's funny. It's only recently that this has started going through my mind. I felt so good my past few fights that in the middle of camp I get worried that maybe that was my peak. Like you look back, you're like, maybe that was the best version of myself, and then you outdo yourself the next time, and then you keep outdoing yourself, and that's only been recently where it's been a little bit of just mind flip, mind game where it's like, man, I felt really good for that fight. Am I not that good anymore? Like, did I lose something? And it's of course not. Like, I've stayed on the process of improving everything. I'm very lucky that I'm with Dave Roach there. I'm really building a striking identity. I felt for a long time I knew who I was as a grappler. I had my sequences. I knew who I was, but as a striker, I knew how to strike, but I didn't have a strong identity, and we've been really building that, and so we're keeping on building that. But then again, I'm in the gym daily and year round, so I'm getting pushed by countless teammates. There's always a young, hungry guy trying to take your spot. So I'm kind of there at the top, kind of trying to scare them off.
Excellent. And I think you kind of hinted at what you might do after the fight in Toronto. So are you planning on staying home for Christmas with the family?
Absolutely. After, it's tough being away from home. It really is, and it's not like I can hop on a 2 hour flight and pop on home for a weekend, or even take a road trip and go home. It's what, 6 time zones and a 4 day travel. It's not the easiest thing, you know. Um, so whenever I have a fight, there's the natural week after a fight where your body's beaten up. It doesn't matter how good the fight goes, you're usually beaten up from it. So there's a week of non-functional time, if you will. It's like mandatory rest at least a week. So you might as well be surrounded by loved ones recharging those batteries. So after fights, especially if I'm fighting in North America, which thankfully, being in the UFC right now, I am. I'm taking that opportunity. I'm going to go home. I'm going to freeze my butt off in Winnipeg and hopefully spend at least a week. I'm hoping for 2 weeks. Soak that up and then come back here and plan for the next one and be built towards the future. And unfortunately, it's you want to take long vacations, you want to go places, but over time, I've realized, just what fuels me the most is my family, my friends, and everything I'm missing over here. So we can call it a sacrifice. I think it's more of a choice, and I'm living the dream, really.
For sure. And just a few lastly for you. Obviously, I'm kind of putting you on the spot here, but Conor McGregor, I know he's kind of been in the news, maybe making a comeback in April, possibly, which would make a whole lot of sense for the UFC. Have you been able to see him train lately, and what have you seen from him? And what can you comment on his work ethic, like just the insane work ethic that he has?
I think I'm trying to think when I last saw him. It hadn't been that recently. I think it had been. We have quite opposite schedules. I know he likes training later, and I don't want to say I'm always first thing in the morning, but I get my 11 o'clock practice in, and then I want to be home by 7:30, 8 o'clock at night, and getting ready for the next day. But so maybe sometimes his training sessions are a little bit later, but I remember seeing him quite a bit in the gym. Again, it feels like so long ago. It was before the finale, and I know I just saw him post, some videos and photos of him training with Brendan Loughnane and and some good guys out in Dubai, I believe. So with him, he's always working. He always has a team around him. That much I can say. Like you see the photos, you see the videos. I see training trainers disappear for a little while, and obviously getting some work in. So uh, even if it's not always the 11 o'clock session here at SPG, he's probably doing something. Like you don't. First off, you don't look like that year round by just sitting on your butt the entire time. He's obviously doing something, and then you see all the training videos and training with Lockdown, PFL champ isn't, I think, the easiest training. So even if he's not here, there's I know as much as you, really. I'm just following him on social media. So when he's in the gym, I can report on that. But I only see him so much. And let's face it, I'm a small little bantamweight, so I don't know if I'm any match for middleweight Connor now.
For sure, for sure. And I don't know how if you're much of a drinker, but if you have tried it, the Black Forge, can you kind of describe the beer over there? Is it kind of like your typical Irish beer, or what? Give your thoughts on it.
So it's I have tried it. Thankfully, I tried it before going into the Ultimate Fighter House, and then it was stocked in the Ultimate Fighter House. I couldn't partake. Thankfully, I kept on winning, so I couldn't enjoy a couple pints. But it's good stuff. Since the fight, I've definitely enjoyed. I've gone down to his restaurant, the back Black Forge as well, and it's a really it's a really cool spot. I suggest if you ever travel here to check it out. But that's where you can probably get the freshest pint of Forge Irish Stout, and it's good. If you're a fan of Guinness, it's similar to that, slightly different characteristics, a little bit smoother. So if you're into a good pint of Guinness, then you're going to be right at home with the Forge Irish Stout. So I I haven't had a bad pint there. So like I'm not going to pretend like it's not great. It's solid. It's just I wish it was more available here.
Yeah, and I think that they distribute it out in the U.S. as well. I think they're having some locations in the U.S. Unfortunately, I just
Yes.
feel like you're not going to get the same experience as if you had in Dublin there for sure. You know, get your typical Irish bar there, bar and grill there.
I'll say firsthand, go come to the Black Forge, get a steak on a stone, get a fresh Forge Irish Stout, and you'll be a pretty happy camper. I don't think you can go wrong.
And that being said, talking about having a cheat meal after the fight, you're going to be in Canada. So, do you have cheat meals? And if you do, you got to get yourself a poutine. I would have to say.
Yeah. I'll definitely have to give myself a poutine somewhere in Toronto after the fight. You know, I'll be the biggest thing for me is when you go home, it's just being surrounded by family and friends, and the I guess the holidays is you're surrounded by food and drink and festivities, and it's just that feel. And I'll be I'll be dragging my friends and family out to stretch out that Christmas spirit, if you will. I'm going to be trying to soak it all in, and they're not going to have much of a choice. But uh, just looking forward, it's the little things. You know, it's always the little things. It's not one meal or one food. It's the idea of sitting around with those that you hold dear, and being able to share a meal. So that's what I'm looking forward to most. And it's a ways off, and I'm a couple lbs off, so I'm looking forward to that journey. But it'll be worth it, you know, after UFC Toronto.
Excellent. Well, I don't want to take too much more of your time here, Brad. I just want to thank you for taking the time again, and just good luck on January 20th.
Thank you. Yeah, it's again full circle, and a fairy tale beginning, we'll call it. You know, it feels good to be back, and and back at home. You know, back in the UFC, and back in Canada.
And the Canadian fans are looking forward to it. And MMA Unhinged we'll be watching the fights. So yeah, again, good luck, and we'll talk to you again soon.
I appreciate it. Thank you.